about how he's committed to this team, but the team isn't putting the right enough pieces around him, and they just have not been doing. They've been doing him a disservice, really. Hello and welcome to the Friday, January 29th edition of the TV on Basketball podcast with your host, TV. Hope you're all having an awesome day, and thank you for clicking on to watch or listen to today's episode. Before we start, I have to plug my other platforms. Remember to follow at TV on Basketball on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram for updates on the podcast and for other great content. If you're on YouTube, remember to like, share, and subscribe. That would be highly appreciated. And for all my podcast listeners, remember to subscribe and leave a review if you're on Apple. As for the Spotify, Anchor, or Podbean listeners, continue to show your support in any way possible. I really do appreciate you guys. I have a great episode lined up. It's going to be very trade heavy because there have been a lot of trade rumors circulating around the NBA. I'm going to be talking about my Toronto Raptors, which I haven't talked about in a while. And we're going to be, talking about, the All-Star potential of an All-Star game, other NBA news, and of course, we're going to end it off with the game of the weekend. It's going to be an action-packed episode, so let's get right into this. And this is where I want to start. One of the biggest news coming out of this week wasn't really news, but the fact that the Wizards are still struggling. I've talked about the Wizards in the past and how they've not looked good, but I've decided to, give them time before I really know, what to make of them. And although I think they still do need some time, I think it's fair to say right now that they've been playing absolute trash. They have. They have the worst record in the league, which no one expected, let's be honest. When you have a team with Russell Westbrook, Bradley Beal, and, just good pieces around them, such as Hachimura, Denny Avdia, you don't expect them to be near the bottom of the league, let alone last. But that's what they have. That's what they've been doing. Bradley Beal, he's averaging 35 points a game this year. 35.4 points a game. That's 5 points higher than the second highest player, which is Kevin Durant at 30. And what are they? 3-11. They are 3-11, and the team has just not played good at all. At all. If you just look at they're 14th in offensive rating. Cool. They're average. And a lot of that has to do with Bradley Beal. Take Bradley Beal off that team, they're going to be at the bottom. Defensive rating, 29th in the league. They just cannot stop anyone. It doesn't help that Thomas Bryant is injured as well, but they just do not have the ring protection. The Raptors released Alex Len a week and a half ago, and the Wizards were that desperate to pick him off waivers. They just need they just haven't gotten anything out of that end of the floor. They're in the bottom 6 in rebounding. They're average in the field goals. They're average at threes, and they just have not played well whatsoever. Well, you can look at obviously the defense as one of those issues and stuff like that, but Russell Westbrook hasn't been playing up to his capabilities. Obviously, he has had to do with some injuries. I know he finally got healthy just last week, but he hasn't been good this year. 18 points a game, 10 assists, 9 rebounds, on 37% from the field, 30% from 3, 61% at the line. That is just not the Russell Westbrook we are accustomed to. And the thing about these Washington Wizards is that, we just thought their offense would be good enough to carry them here. Because if you look at last year, they were 9th in the East. They just made the NBA bubble. They played bad. They definitely played bad. But why were they 9th? Because Bradley Beal, although they were horrendous on the defensive end, was able to carry them through these games. The thing is now is, where's the help coming for Bradley Beal? 35 points a game for Bradley Beal. One of their third leading scorer, Thomas Bryant, 14 points a game out of their roster. Davis Bertans, who's only played 10 games this season, 11 points a game, hasn't played in a while. And then who's next? Clearly Scott Brooks doesn't know how to use Denny Avdia. Robin Lopez, the starting center, it just isn't good enough. Hachimura has also been in and out of the lineup. He hasn't played in such a long time. He went through long stretches where he didn't even play because of some injuries, and he only played 7 games this year. yes, they've been done dirty, especially by the COVID protocols. They've been done dirty through injuries, but this team is not a 3-11 team. It really isn't, and you can just tell over the last few games, like they're better than this. They should be better than this, and you see them, go up against the teams like the San Antonio Spurs just a couple of days ago, maybe just over a week ago. They lost by 20, and Bradley Beal put on a massive game, 31 points. You look at the Houston Rockets game where Bradley Beal scored 33. The whole team scored 88, and 33 of them were Bradley Beal. Even the Pelicans lost. He scored 47, and that got blown out by double digits. And this is what led to people talking about, the possibility of Bradley Beal being traded. Because at this point, Bradley Beal has pledged his allegiance to the Washington Wizards. He's signed contract extensions. He's openly talked about how he's committed to this team. But the team isn't putting the right enough pieces around him, and they just have not been doing. They've been doing him a disservice, really. And I think it's time. And I think Wizards fans believe. I think a lot of NBA fans wouldn't mind if Bradley Beal had a trade request. He's been there for way too long, and a player of his caliber should not be wasting his prime years in a situation like Washington. He really shouldn't be. I mean, just look at what he's done. I mean, last year he averaged over 30 points a game and like I think 7 or 6 assists, and he didn't make the All-Star team. He's the first player to average 30 points a game in a season to not make an All-Star team. He just has the Wizards have been doing him a disservice, and at this point, I mean, you gotta applaud loyalty. You got to, especially in this day and age where everyone is requesting trades, wanting to go somewhere else. It's good to see people reminiscent of Dirk, people like Kobe Bryant who are loyal to their one team. But at this point, for Beal, we're talking about a wasted career here. We're almost at that point, and I think it's kind of now or never. I mean, maybe Beal wants to give maybe a couple more games to see how it is after Russell Westbrook is maybe at full strength, but it isn't gonna. But I just don't think it's going to be. Their defense is not gonna get any better, and who's really gonna step up on the offensive end? I really just do not trust that team whatsoever, and I think it's time for them to get rid of Beal. So I have 3 trade destinations here for Bradley Beal as to where I think he could get traded. I think he could, really help that team and, take him to the next level. I've talked about some of these teams in the past, but at this point, I think it's almost inevitable that this is going to happen. I think it should happen. The question is, what type of package do the Wizards want in return? Maybe they're asking for too much, and who knows? Maybe Bradley Beal will stay this season. But I think it's almost time for Bradley Beal to get to that point where he has to request a trade. He can't be wasting his prime years on a dying team, putting up these massive numbers. So here are the 3 teams I have in mind for Bradley Beal to get traded to. The first one I've talked about in the past, the Philadelphia 76ers. I think they can work out the contracts, especially, with Tobias Harris on that team. I think they can make it work. And they have some young pieces there. They also can throw in a couple of draft picks. I think getting Bradley Beal is not out of the question. I think by doing this, obviously they have to get rid of Tobias Harris, who is having a good year. And he's kind of reminiscent of LA Clippers Tobias Harris, where he was under Doc and he was actually playing some of the best basketball in his career. And Doc is getting the best out of Tobias Harris once again this year. But it could be the situation like the Clippers where you look at Tobias Harris and be like, we could use this guy and use him as a trading piece, especially because he has all-time value right now, a good value, and just take our team to the next level by getting Bradley Beal. And I could see it happening because Bradley Beal is just the perfect player for this team. He can play off ball, he could be that secondary ball handler, and he is just a scoring machine with a good defensive team in Philly. I think it can work out really well if the 76ers can create a package for him. The next team I would want to see him go to is the Miami Heat. And I think the Miami Heat at this point are looking at their roster and being like, I know this team made it to the NBA Finals, but is this team sustainable? Especially because the East is getting better. We saw the moves that Brooklyn made to get James Harden. We see they see the way the Pacers are playing. They see the way the Celtics and the 76ers are doing really well. And the Heat kind of feel like, especially because they've been struggling this year, 13th in the East. Obviously, they've had a lot of injuries. I mean, Butler's only played 6 games and stuff like that. Hero is finally coming back from his injury. But I think the Heat, and they've done this in the past where they kind of like took the chance and got a superstar or a star player to take them to the next level. And I think the Heat fans love Tyler Hero. They love what he did in the playoffs last year, and they're sticking with him. I mean, he is a good player. He is a very good player. But I think it's time. Like if at this point, like if you have a chance to get Bradley Beal, I wouldn't mind using Tyler Hero as that sacrificial lamb to make it happen. Because you have Jimmy Butler in his prime, because you have a Gordon Bam Adebayo, I think it's time to make some changes and actually commit to a third superstar to like put them in that upper echelon of the East. And I think including Tyler Hero in that package, obviously they have some contracts they can mess with. Maybe trading Myers Leonard, maybe trading Kelly Olynyk along with him, and they can make the contracts work to get Bradley Beal. And that's definitely a Pat Riley move. I mean, in the past, they traded for players such as Shaquille O'Neal. They seek star power, and Bradley Beal is definitely on that level where I think Pat Riley is going to look and be like, you know what, it's time to like take our team to the next level. Let's bring in Bradley Beal. And the third team I want to see Bradley Beal go to, and this is my number one thing because I think that this team is on the cusp of something great, and I think Bradley Beal will take him there. And that is the Denver Nuggets. I think they have a plethora of good guard options that they can trade. Gary Harris. You have people like Will Barton. Maybe not even Will Barton. You can trade people like Monte Morris and all that. They just have a lot of like nice like young pieces. They have some picks. They can even throw in a bowl, and I think they can like just get this package for Bradley Beal, and I think they can definitely make the trade work. The only question is like how far are the Wizards going to like if like that package is going to be enough for the Wizards, and will the Wizards be like if they're on the phone with Nuggets, hey, yeah, we could do this trade, but we want Michael Porter Jr. And I don't know how invested the Nuggets are in him. I'm highly invested in the guy. I think he's going to be an absolute fantastic player. He has just like one of those builds that it just looks unstoppable. But kind of like the Tyler Hero situation in Miami, are you willing to trade like one of your young studs to get an established star? Because Michael Porter Jr. obviously has his injury issues. I mean, he missed, I believe, all of his first season. And he was kind of like in and out of his second season, but now he's finally healthy and he actually has looked great. But but do you think like he will be able to stay there long term? And do you think like you would rather, try and compete now and try and get a Bradley Beal? That's really up to Nuggets, but I think him matched up with Jamal Murray, Nikola Jokic and all them, I think would be absolutely insane. I think that team would be like near like the top contenders in the West just because they have another player that can score late in games and playoff ball. I just think that the Nuggets would definitely be a good place for him. But yeah, those are the three destinations for Bradley Beal that I would want to see him go to. I want to know, like, Wizards fans, like, do you think it's time to blow things up? Do you think like you've done Beal a disservice? And if you're not a Wizards fan, like, where would you want to see Bradley Beal go? Do you think he should stay with the Washington Wizards, or should you think he should be traded? And if so, where? Let me know in the comments. Well, let's move to this. I haven't talked about this team in a while. They are my favorite team in the league. Obviously, in the background, you could see my Toronto Raptors flag. I'm wearing a Toronto Raptors hat today. Let's talk about the Toronto Raptors because I haven't done that in a while. Because I talked about in the past how they've had a rough start to the season, but over the last week or so, they have been starting to get back into form. Although they are on a 2-game losing streak, they have been competitive and they've shown a lot of good flashes. And I've liked the way they're playing, especially shooting the 3-pointer. I mean, they're second in 3-point field goals made each game, which is fantastic. They're top 10 in percentage. They hit their free throws. But the problem still remains for this Raptors that I've seen early in the season is that they don't have a consistent inside presence. What I like so far, though, is that the players that have been struggling before this early on in the season are starting to find their footing. I mean, OG Anunoby, absolutely phenomenal over these last week or two. Siakam, it's kind of recovered. I mean, still want that consistency there, but he's shown flashes of his all-star self. Aaron Baines is playing the best basketball we've seen in a while. Chris Boucher has had a career year. Terrence Davis is getting some play time. Watanabe has been a great glue guy. But the thing is, when you lose players like Serge Ibaka and Marc Gasol, you're going to miss that inside presence. And that has been definitely a problem for the Raptors. I mean, yes, they've been good defensively, but that just has to do because they have awesome perimeter defenders. Because they can't rebound still, and they just haven't, really like found ways to close games. Especially because one, they just can't get the rebounds. I mean, you've seen against the Indiana Pacers where Sabonis and Turner were just eating up the glass. Same thing in the Bucks game. I mean, Giannis had, I think, a near 20 rebound game. And the Raptors just can't compete with that. Yes, they have these good players. They have Fred VanVleet, who's playing really well, Kyle Lowry, and Pascal Siakam. But they're missing that inside presence. I know you wanted Siakam to be that, but he's a better perimeter defender. And you just do not have that inside presence to really make the Raptors, a for sure playoff team, and maybe a second tier, third tier contender. I think that's what's just kind of missing with the Toronto Raptors. Now, I don't know if Masai Ujiri wants to make a trade this season. Maybe he's waiting for the offseason to make some moves. But I think, this team is probably not good enough to, compete at that level. But I do think that the Toronto Raptors, with a few changes, I mean, there's very few holes you have to fill that I think you can definitely make the argument that the Raptors are maybe a piece or two away from being, that good of a team again. And another reason, why I've seen the Raptors over these last few games is that, and the struggles that they've had, is that they don't really have a go-to scorer at the end of the game. It really does matter who's on that night to do it. But I guess that's kind of how the Raptors are. It's kind of like next man up. Whoever's got the hot hand, you're the one who's gonna take us home. But this team is just looking average. They're just looking pretty average. They've shown flashes of their old self, but I think they need to go on a nice 5-6 game winning streak to really get back into play for that 5th, 6th, 4th seed type beat. I want to see them do well. I want to see the Raptors back to their form, but this roster probably it's a good roster, but it definitely does need some work. Before I move on to the next topic, I would want to congratulate Kyle Lowry for being the third Raptor in franchise history to reach 10,000 points of the team, joining Chris Bosh and DeMar DeRozan. Fantastic player, greatest Raptor of all time. I need to do a full congratulations on Kyle Lowry being the best Raptor of all time, but yeah, he's done so much for this organization, and I want to see him do it. Stay here for the long term. Obviously, it's going to be a question whether he decides to stay with the team in the offseason or not. But either way, he is the greatest Raptor of all time. No question. Let's talk some more trade rumors because the Detroit Pistons, I talked about them last week, how, yes, they're doing a good job tanking. I mean, they're second worst in the East right now, right just above the Washington Wizards. But I didn't really talk about what I would do if I'm the Pistons. And I think it's time to trade Blake Griffin and D Rose. Yes, they're good players. I mean, Blake has been awful this season, bar last night against the Los Angeles Lakers, where he kind of had a good game, 23.6 rebounds. But he hasn't been, Blake of old. And D Rose, although he's been good as well, I think his talents would be much more needed on a contender. So I have some destinations I think that could work for both players. Blake Griffin was definitely a lot harder, so I'm going to get to that last. But D Rose, I think there are a couple teams that could use a player like him. One of them being the Los Angeles Clippers, because I think I am just not trusting their point guard rotation right now. I don't think that any of them are kind of reliable playmakers, and they're kind of more of a tweener. Patrick Beverley, yes, they label him as a point guard, but he has shooting guard, a shooting guard type mentality, and plus most of his focus is on the defensive end. And people like Reggie Jackson sound the same thing. He's basically a shooting guard in a point guard's body. And I think bringing in D Rose, who has experience running a team, who has had good production over the last few years, would be a lot more beneficial to the Los Angeles Clippers. Now, what would that take to trade for him? I would say maybe, throwing in maybe a young piece. Maybe you got to throw in Terrence Mann. Maybe you got to throw in, um, I wouldn't say Luke Kennard, but maybe someone like a Reggie Jackson in return, and maybe some draft picks or whatever you have left after those trades to get him. But I think that would probably be the best place for Rose to go. And just seeing him on a contender would honestly is what everyone wants to see, like every NBA fan. Derrick Rose has gone through some hardships, and I think we want to see him kind of reach that pinnacle and get an NBA championship and be a contributor to that team. So I think the Clippers are the best for that. Now a team who has playoff aspirations, definitely not title aspirations, and I think could use a player like D Rose here. And I know this sounds kind of funny just because they had him a couple years ago, and I think now that they're kind of competing, maybe they're looking to upgrade that point guard position. Maybe would make a deal for D Rose. And then talking about the New York Knicks. There have been a lot of rumors over the past few days saying that the Knicks have been interested in D Rose, along with the Los Angeles Clippers. And, the Knicks have been competing. I mean, they've definitely have fallen off a little bit. They are now 8-11. But they're still somehow 8 in the East. I mean, that's how kind of crazy the East has been. But they have interest in D Rose, and I think if he does go there, he's definitely going to be getting a good amount of touches. Obviously, it's not a contender, but you definitely see him in a more, prominent role on a more, in an aspiring team, which we would want to see as NBA fans. And the third team here, who I think can be a dark horse in the race for Derrick Rose, is maybe the Houston Rockets. I mean, I don't know why, but if you've seen my Instagram posts and stuff, even if you've seen some of my comments on other posts, I talk about how the Houston Rockets are really trying to build the mid-2000s dream team. DeMarcus Cousins, John Wall, Victor Oladipo. I mean, maybe that wasn't mid-2000s, but that was mid to late 2000s. And if they bring in Derrick Rose, man, it's basically having a throwback team. I think that he would definitely fit with them. And what I think why the Rockets could use him is that, look, when John Wall has to rest, when John Wall has to go to the bench, they really don't have that secondary ball handler. I mean, Eric Gordon's okay, but he's better off the ball. And Oladipo's okay, but he's also, not a primary ball handler. Bring in Derrick Rose, and they still have, playoff aspirations as well. So I think he would definitely contribute to that team, and I think he just fits the feel, having a throwback team. I mean, obviously DeMarcus Cousins used to be All NBA, Oladipo, John Wall. Bring in Derrick Rose, we have a freaking 2010s team over here. So I think he would be a nice fit there. Obviously, I think the best situation for him would be the Clippers. But if other teams want to go after him, I just want to see him in a competitive situation. Now for Blake. This one was a lot harder because you look up and down the roster, and sometimes you have to be okay, how can this team use Blake? And what hurts a lot of these teams is that Blake Griffin's contract is massive. It's gonna be so hard to trade for him. It's gonna be extremely difficult. Because you look at the team a Philadelphia 76ers, why would they want Blake? You have to just look at some of these contenders. I mean, the Lakers, maybe having Blake would be cool, but also their front court is just loaded. There's no point. The Utah Jazz, could they use him? Yes. Would they treat any of their high-value players for him? No way. There's just so many, little things, there's always, a reason, why they shouldn't trade for Blake. And plus his massive contract is going to make it extremely difficult for that to happen. So the only team I could really think of is maybe the Miami Heat. He's the only team I could see taking a chance on him. I mean, obviously I think if the Pistons were to trade Blake, maybe they might attach a pick in return so you have some sort of compensation. But the Heat, maybe they try to revitalize Blake Griffin's career. Having another ball handler maybe would help. I just like the prospect of him with Bam just because they're both really good passers. And they both can, throw lobs to each other. I think it would be a nice big-to-big combination. Especially if Blake has added that 3-point shot, I think he could definitely work in that system. But I would take, trading Kelly Olynyk, Myers Leonard, maybe some other players, and some young pieces as well. Maybe they had to give up maybe a Precious Achua. And I don't think the Miami Heat would want that, but I think that's the only chance I could see, Blake Griffin being used in a nice role. And still having it, and a team having the assets to trade for him. I mean, it's just hard because Blake's contract, I mean, it just feels untradeable. And I know there's no untradeable contract in the NBA because we thought Chris Paul's contract a few years ago was untradeable, but he got to the Oklahoma City Thunder and he was still a beast. So any player is tradable, but Blake Griffin is as close to like an untradeable contract as you can get. Just because he has this year, and I think he also has a player option next year, which he will definitely be taking up. I will guarantee that. So, yeah, I mean, I think the Presidents really should be getting rid of some of these veterans just so they can go all in on the young guys. But I think it would be a lot easier to trade Derrick Rose. It really would be. Blake is definitely a big question, but if they can get rid of him, that would definitely be a good thing. And we're going to be talking about some more trade rumors because the New Orleans Pelicans are also in a lot of trade rumors because they've been horrible. I talked about on Monday's episode where you should be selling your stock all on the New Orleans Pelicans just because their roster is just not fit to compete. No shooting in the starting lineup, one of the worst 3-point shooting teams in the league. They can't hit free throws, they can't defend, and they have all the talent on their team, and it just isn't working out. And now there have been rumors that they're trying to move Lonzo Ball just because I don't think they want to be paying him after his contract expires. And even JJ Redick is on the trading block because he has not been good for them this year. Again, I look at both these guys, I'm like, what are some destinations that these two players should go to? And we start off with JJ Redick here because I think this guy would fit in a lot more systems in the NBA compared to Lonzo, just because Lonzo needs to be a primary ball handler wherever he goes. So for JJ Redick, let's start there. I think two teams that would really benefit from him is the Denver Nuggets again and the Memphis Grizzlies. I'm going to start with the Denver Nuggets just because it won't take too long. I don't think it'll take much to get rid of him. I mean, to acquire JJ Redick. You won't even probably have to trade people like Will Barton and Gary Harris. I think just bring in JJ Redick, to add more shooting, a great off-ball player. I think we'll just add an extra element to this team where you have kind of that knockdown shooter. And like I said, it won't take much to get him. For the Memphis Grizzlies, I think I look at them and I see one of the worst shooting teams in the NBA, but they have the defense, and that's what's helping them compete. They don't have many veterans on that team. I mean, Jonas Valanciunas, I think, is considered kind of the vet on the team. But bringing in JJ Redick to help their 3-point shooting, also be a nice voice in the locker room, I think would be absolutely fantastic for the Grizzlies. Obviously, beside John Morant, I think JJ Redick would just feed on that team, and I think it would just be a good addition where I don't think they would have to give up much, and they could still be competing. Because surprisingly, the Grizzlies, I believe, are sixth in the West. I mean, they haven't played in a while because of COVID issues, but when we last saw them, they were on a 5-game winning streak. And I think adding a shooting element to that team would definitely help them, and JJ Redick is the perfect guy for that. Lonzo, on the other hand, is different. Because like I said, if you were to trade Lonzo Ball, he has to be the primary ball handler on your team. So I have two teams here where I think I could see it working out, and plus they have the assets to do so. The first team, not as much, just because I talked about him earlier when trying to acquire Derrick Rose. And I'm going to talk about the Los Angeles Clippers. What I like about Lonzo Ball and the Clippers is that all he has to do is just pass the ball off and just hit an open three, which he hasn't really been doing this year, but I think he would definitely get better looks with the Clippers. Because they just need a true PG. Like I said, Patrick Beverley, Kennard, and Reggie Jackson, they're tweeners. They're tweeners at the guard position. And they just need that true point guard. And what he does as well is just help improve their defense. The Clippers are a really good defensive team as is. Bringing Lonzo Ball is just another really good defender. Especially because he can, if he can get back to his shooting from last year, that would be great. And also he just has the size and the speed to just defend other players, especially at the guard position. And the other team I want to talk about here is just because they were in trade rumors and I can see it kind of working, and that is the Golden State Warriors. I just think that Curry is just so effective off ball, and you can tell in these games because I've been seeing some Golden State Warrior games. I mean, yes, Curry is their primary ball handler, but you could tell Draymond Green is initiating the offense, and Curry wants to move off ball. He wants to like get into a rhythm when coming off these screens. And who better to like kind of um, to give them those passes to get him into open space is Lonzo Ball, one of the best passers in the league, and I think he'll just be able to alleviate pressure off Curry and let Curry do what he does so well. And I think like the Golden State Warriors have been a good like rehabilitation for players who have kind of had disappointing careers to start off with, a la Andrew Wiggins, and they just because they have that winning mentality, I think they can really help out a player like Lonzo Ball, having that winning mentality, having that championship mentality. And I think Lonzo would just, benefit from being on the Warriors. And he could definitely be a piece for them in the future, pairing him up with James Wiseman. It could definitely be a possibility. And and although, some people would want to say, why would you want to get the ball out of Curry's hands? I think Curry wants the ball out of Curry's hands in the sense where, yes, he is, like I said, he's the primary ball handler, but he wants to like come off those screens like he used to. He wants to like be in those type of situations, rather than having to dribble 99% of the time. So I think Lonzo Ball could help that. Obviously, the Warriors have not been great on the defensive end, and Lonzo will definitely help that. But yeah, I think he would honestly be an okay piece for them if they are able to bring him in. It's going to be interesting just to see what type of moves the Pelicans make in general because, like I said in the last episode, they need to make these trades. They have to make some sort of trades because they're just not going to go anywhere with the roster that they have constructed right now. Before we head into the final segments of today's show, we have some other news and notes. The NBA has just started their All-Star starter voting, which opened, I believe, yesterday or 2 days ago at noon. So keep start voting for your starters. Obviously, like the last few years, the All-Star voting is 50% fans, 25% players, 25% media, and it's going to be interesting to see who's going to make the All-Star team this year. Speaking of the All-Star game, the NBA is in talks of maybe having it sometime in March. They're going to just gather the two teams and kind of have some sort of exhibition match. I know this is a revenue thing. I'm not going to talk too much on this, but with the way the COVID cases are right now, obviously they're going down, which has been fantastic. I mean, the vaccine is definitely helping, and people are following orders. But the NBA has had troubles early on in the season trying to contain it, and they already postponed over 20 games this season. And if you have all these players from different teams coming together to play an exhibition match, which, let's be honest, it doesn't matter. I just don't think it will be safe, and I think it's extremely unsafe, especially around stars, because if one of them contracts COVID, all of them have to isolate, and that's just not a good look for your league. That's just not, because if those guys have to isolate, you're going to be like 10, 14 days without some of the best players in the league. So if I'm the NBA, I'm looking at you straight in the camera, no All-Star game, please. Next, speaking of COVID, PG and Kawhi Leonard are under the health and safety protocol. They already missed, I believe, 2 games this week, maybe 3. It's not confirmed if they got COVID or not, but they have not played basically all week. And the Clippers have struggled because of it. I mean, I think they lost their last few games. Karis LeVert, good news on him. He's expected to make a full recovery after surgery on his kidney. They found some sort of cancerous mass there. I mean, he basically had cancer and he got treated right away, which is absolutely fantastic, and he's expected to make a full recovery. He's out indefinitely, but thank God it went well. Hopefully, Karis LeVert, we can see him back on the court, but thank God he's okay. And we're going to end this episode with the game of the weekend. Right now, I sit 5-6 after taking the Nuggets last game. I think they had they were +2 underdogs, and I'm like, look, they're rolling right now. I think they're going to get this win, and I believe they won that game by 6 or 8, so I'm slowly but surely reaching the 500, but right now I am at 5-6. This weekend's matchup, because I talked about the Raptors earlier, I had to put them into this game of the weekend. Tonight, the Raptors are facing the Sacramento Kings. The opening line was -6.5, but it has been lowered to -5.5, favored it to the Toronto Raptors, and I think they're going to take it here. Yes, the Raptors have kind of lost their last 2 games, but they've been competitive, and I think they're playing. They're slowly but surely getting back to their own form. 5.5 points is quite a bit. I think it'll still be a competitive game, but it's going to be one of those games where the Raptors are kind of competitive. It's going to be a competitive game for 3 quarters, and I think the Raptors are going to be able to pull away in the fourth. I have the Raptors maybe winning by 8 or 10 points over the Sacramento Kings. Hopefully I'm right. I want to get back to 500 because it's kind of been a slow start for me in these game of the week / game of the weekend. So let's try to get back to 500. I'm taking the Raptors minus 5.5. But yeah, I think this is where we're going to end today's episode. Thank you guys for watching / or listening. Remember to show love on all the podcast channels. Like, share, and subscribe if you're on YouTube. And remember to follow at TV on Basketball on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram for great content. I have a lot of content coming out. I've been putting in some work on TikTok, trying to do daily NBA recaps as well as a Thursday topic. If you guys want to debate with me, come join the Sports Me app. I think that it's a really fun app that I've been really using. Obviously, I had Jeff from Sports Me, I believe 2 weeks ago, or last week. No, it was last Friday where I had him on the show and we talked about the app and stuff. You should definitely get on it. It's a really fun app for you guys to join. And yeah, I didn't post a YouTube video this week. I'm going to be back on that next week. And yeah, I just have a lot of great content in the upcoming for you guys. I have some ideas in the works. More collabs hopefully in the future. And I'm just excited for the future of this. Just excited for more NBA basketball. And thank you guys for coming along on my journey. Right now, I just eclipsed 2,300 listens, which is insane because I've got, I think, over... or just podcast downloads. I mean, I think just 10 months ago, I was at under 400 and 1,900 over these past, this past 10 months has been absolutely fantastic. Thank you guys for all your support. I'm going to try and continue to make great content out for you guys. But yeah, like I said, thank you guys for all your support. And just watch out for some great content. That's it. Hope you all have a fantastic day. TV signing out. Take it easy, guys.